Hello there, and welcome back to Dr. Teach Me to Parent. We had a great program today as we're going to look at the issue of art and how that contributes to family life. And as a parent, what you can do with your children to help them appreciate art, but perhaps even more than that, become an artist. Whether it becomes a professional artist or an amateur or they just play with art in some form or way, but just kind of look at the idea of art in the family and being able to appreciate the importance of art in the development of your children as you go about your parenting process, from day to day, and how you integrate art within your family life. So that's what we're on today, and to put us in perspective, let me give you a kind of a quote, and it's on the screen there in front of you. Art puts a smile in one's heart. So art does something to people. Art contributes to people. Art makes people respond in a certain way. It has an effect on people. And that's our topic today, and we are going to learn more about this by our interview today with Rob Carey, who is an international artist, international sketcher, and has become very well known in the international community of art. And he's going to share some of his art with you today, but also hit the pathway that he became an artist, and then how he sees art unfolding within the life of the family. So that's our program, and get a cup of coffee and join us as we now enter into some conversation here with Rob Carey. But thanks for coming in today. But just before we look at some of your art, we're going to do that in a minute, but give us just kind of a touch of how you started. How does art get started in a life of a kid? How did it get started in your life?
Well, it's interesting because I think, and I've been a teacher for, I was a teacher for over 20 years and in the classroom. And if you ask a kid who's a kindergartner, if you ask that class, how many of you are artists, you'll probably get a unanimous hand raising.
Well, every young
all
kid
the kids,
every kindergarten,
all the kids see themselves in an artist.
Yeah.
But as they start getting older, they start seeing themselves less as maybe the artists that they once thought they were. And if you ask them when they're in 4th or 5th grade, same question. You'll only get a few hands because the kids start kind of singling out who are the artists in the class and who are not the artists.
You mean you actually know that you're an artist or not, or is it just that you become kind of a critical person, of your own abilities and your skills? And some kids are more negative, and some kids are more positive, and
well, I think a lot of it has to do with feedback. So what happens is you've got a lot of different kids are going to be doing art. They're going to be doing art projects, and then they'll be comparing themselves with other kids.
Yes.
Initially, they don't compare themselves as much, but as they start getting older, some of the kids will compare themselves, and they'll say, I didn't draw that bear, quite the same as Jimmy drew his bear, and so I'm not as good, and so they'll start seeing themselves as not an artist, and they'll kind of shut down that part of themselves.
That can be a shameful thing, for a kid. If in 5th grade he draws the conclusion that he's not an artist.
Right.
But let's really say that he really does have the potential to become one.
Right.
That's a shameful thing.
It is a terrible thing. And if you talk
to a parent
to
and teacher, you have to do something at that point.
I think it's important for teachers to do something. They need to reinforce the ability, and it kind of comes back to what's happening in education now with what they call the this mindset of it's like you're closed off. You think that you are. You kind of say, well, this is who I am, and you put yourself into a pigeonhole.
Yeah.
I'm the math kid, or I'm the reading kid, and I'm the art kid. And so we need, it's like a growth mindset is the kind of mindset where we really want to instill that in kids, where kids will say, I'm a developing artist, I'm a developing mathematician, or a developing scientist. And that's really where we want to go.
I like that point, because the idea of that I'm not an artist at 6th grade, that's kind of a false idea.
Yeah.
Nobody's an artist at 6th grade.
Right. Yeah.
But you have art skills, you have art interest, you have art appreciation, you have art technique.
Yep.
All to be developed.
Absolutely.
And that's where the teacher comes in. That's where the parent comes in.
Right.
But to give the kid an open door by saying you have the potential or you have the likelihood of becoming more of an artist.
Right. Yeah.
It's more of an artist rather than an artist.
Absolutely. Well, this is why I agree big time with the idea of liberal studies. And even starting very early on, we teach kids every single subject so that they'll have an opportunity to see what they really do enjoy the most, and they're becoming more well-rounded as they develop skills in all different areas.
Yeah. Did you have a teacher that kind of told you have the potential for art? Did you have a mother, a father? I mean, did you have somebody that came into your life and said, Rob, you got the potential. Keep working on it. Keep developing it.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's probably what spurred me toward doing more with art. You know, my parents, one thing that I think was really interesting that they did was, back then when I was a kid, it was coloring books. Everybody had coloring books. My parents refused to get me coloring books. So they said, right? We're not going to get coloring books for you. We're going to give you blank paper and pencils and crayons.
They wanted you painting outside the lines rather than inside the lines, I guess.
That's right. That's right. And I think that really did help because, and I think that's something we need to think about with kids is give your kids blank paper and tell them to create. Tell them to come up with some idea because oftentimes the blank paper to someone is terribly frightening. Yes. They don't know what to do with it, you know. But a lot of the issues that we have to solve today, it's kind of like a blank page. Mm-hmm. We don't know. We have to just get in there and start doing something.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but it takes somebody to connect with you,
right?
To open that door,
right?
I mean, it may be a teacher.
They need a little confidence. They need some confidence. Yeah. It's a lot of times it's the peers that do that. The peers will. Right? Yeah. Oh yeah, he's really good at drawing. You know,
kids know that. I mean, kids. Yeah, know who's a drawer and who's a painter, and
that was probably the most influential for me as a kid was the peers.
Is that
the
right?
peer
You had
group.
some friends that, kind of.
Oh yeah, give it to Rob. You know, give it to him. He'll draw it. You know.
Is that right?
But I really think though, like I mean, going back to the idea that kids need a champion, they need a cheerleader, they need someone to encourage them.
Let's change that by saying they need many champions.
Yeah, they do.
They need many cheerleaders. They of all ages, lots of teachers, lots of adults in their life, lots of kids in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe the more the better.
Yeah. So true, yeah. And I think one of the things I think back on, I saw myself as the artistic kid who was bad at math.
Oh.
This was how I identified
That's
myself.
How you saw that.
Had I known the connection between math and art
at
an early age, I think I would have had a completely different self-perspective on math. Yeah. Yeah.
So you didn't have a teacher that taught integration, art and math and different subjects. I mean, taught one subject and then taught another subject. And
we did some integration with reading. You know, you'll read a story and then you'll draw a picture based on the story. We'll do some of that integration. Yeah. But science and art, there's a huge connection.
We always think of them as being separate.
Yeah, no, they're very connected, very connected. You look at the symmetrical stuff in science.
Yeah. You
study that, and you say, okay, well, wow, the things in nature are designed. They're designed by a creator. They're fantastic here. And if you can tap into that as a kid.
So would it be fair to say that a kid who has art skills may also have math skills? Or say it the other way around. If you have a kid that has math skills, maybe there's some art skill within that.
Sure.
I mean, I've never heard of that before.
I think
you think of those as being very separate.
No, I think there is. Yeah, I really do. I mean, you think about like what I do for art is someone told me later on, wow, you're a mathematician because you know proportion and perspective. Mm-hmm. I never thought about that.
No, I would never heard that.
Yeah.
You think of those being separate fields. And
because geometry was very hard for me, but having a sense of proportion, how one thing compares to the other, I got.
It might be even that your art interest, if you're told that, if you're educated that these two go together, might even enhance your interest in math.
Absolutely.
It might do better in math.
For sure.
Because you can see that there's some reason for it now, or there's some rationale to it. There's some purpose to it.
Right.
Some use.
Right.
To it. But everybody says, well, I'm never going to use that, so why study it?
Well, we think about art like even the quote, art brings joy to the heart, right?
Yes.
And that's very true. And we need arts in school. We really need that because that's connecting to the emotional part of us.
Yeah.
But there's also the scientific part of art, and there's the math part of art. So there's expression, but then there's also this very scientific left brain. I see it as a kind of a left brain connection with art.
So what do you think were the 2 or 3 or 4 essential elements that brought you to become an artist? To become... where you convince yourself, okay, I have art ability, so then you now go on the path of developing that. We'll go to that later. But what were the 2, 3, or 4 really incidents or people or experiences that's brought you to say, I can do art?
That's a good question. I think one thing that was that just comes to my mind is we had a next door neighbor who was into woodworking.
Okay.
And my parents they kind of introduced me to this guy, and they said, they knew that I had an interest in art. I went next door and we built an art table, and almost like a drafting design table.
Yeah.
It had little slots for pens and pencils and paintbrushes, and I put that on my desk in my room. And so my parents invested in that part of it. They gave me the tools that I needed, made connections for me with.
It wasn't a big investment either.
No, it was.
I mean, a few bucks here and there.
Yeah,
but,
it was just a.
But it was a critical one. It was an important one to you.
Right.
To say, now I have a place to kind of practice this thing I call art.
I had an art studio in my room.
You called it that, huh?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was my pride and joy. I used to go in there. I could hardly wait to get home from school because I would just sit down and I would create and draw. And yeah, it was a.
So you got some art interest. Parents saw that.
Support it, yeah.
Parents bought you an item, a drawing board.
Inexpensive.
And there you went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that was important. I think. I had some teachers also that really contributed to that confidence. I think that they saw that, and they would, like, for instance, opportunities to do things. I would draw or I would paint at Christmas time on people's windows. I would do the murals. I did that in high school, earned a little extra money. I worked in journalism, so I would illustrate the school newspaper, yearbook, things like that. And that was that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think that art is a outgrowth of a lot of artists that you read about, or maybe the art that you view. Go to a museum, art museum, and you see somebody's art and you kind of like that, so you try to imitate it.
Right.
Or you see some art in a book or a magazine and you say, oh, I can do that, and you kind of imitate it. Do you think that's critical to the development of art, in your ability, your interest in art, your skill, is that there were artists that were your encouragers? I mean, you had teachers, you had parents, but were there artists you also kind of followed or kind of clicked with you in some way?
Well, absolutely. I think, I took a hiatus from art for a long, long time.
You did? Uh-huh.
So when for me, I really wanted to be the athlete. That was a big thing for me in school. Okay. I was athletic, but I saw other kids going past me. And then after high school, I just stopped art. I joined the Army. I stopped doing any kind of drawing whatsoever for years and years, at least 15, maybe 20 years.
Really?
I mean, a long, long time. And then it was living in Europe, actually. When we lived in Europe for a long time, that we would visit museums. I saw the architecture, looking at paintings, getting up close to some of these paintings and going, wow.
So you really got a spark.
I said, I can do that. I can do
that. A new
that.
interest, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Was it like starting over? Or do you think you had
it
that residual interest and skill that just easily came forth then?
Yeah, it was actually, it was really, for me, it was a spiritual experience. I remember very specifically walking through the streets of Freiburg one night, and it was at night, and I stopped in a little bookstore and found a book of Van Gogh's paintings.
Oh, yes.
He did 300 of them in a period of about 3 years.
We've all our students of Van Gogh.
Oh, and what's great about Van Gogh is that if you look at his paintings, you go, I could do that. That doesn't look that hard, And so,
until you tried it.
Yeah. And so I grabbed that book, and it was on sale, so I took it home, and that got me going. And of course, we would see Van Goghs in the museum. We would go down to the museum, and I could get up close and personal with the Van Gogh, and I could look at the brush strokes and go, okay, I see exactly how he did this, and it was just inspiring. And at that point, then I knew, and it was, like I said, it was a spiritual experience. I felt like I had been kind of neglecting a love of mine.
Really?
And I got back into it.
So did Van Gogh become one of your
Totally, yeah.
choice artists? I mean,
for sure, and he still is.
I mean, your hero, your example, your model.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah, he started out. Yeah. Now, of course, a lot of his stuff was oil painting. I didn't get into oil painting. I got into more watercolor and pen and ink sketching, things like that. But it was still, there was something there that I saw, that there was something behind the art. It wasn't just he was doing the art to make money, or and it wasn't even just self-expression. There was something he was communicating through that art, and that's what I really.
It just seems to me though that's a common point. Kids in athletics, have their hero,
right?
That kind of sparks them, to keep trying and try something
Right.
new and go for it. People in music have their musicians,
Right.
that they follow. There's that person out there.
Yep.
It was Van Gogh for you,
Sure.
but it could be anybody
You're
in
right.
sports and in music, and anybody that's in the, I'll call it the performing arts,
Right.
probably has that
For sure.
hero or that motto.
Oh yeah,
Model.
And then as I started getting into
Yeah.
as I was getting more into the art and started actually doing the drawing and things, and then I had
Yeah.
a host of people that I would see online.
So it went from Van Gogh to many others.
Many that I would distinguish what I like. This one I like more than this one, and why do I like it? Analyzing what makes one better than the other, and then I got to the place where I started developing my own style, and then I would actually communicate with these other artists, and then we would trade art. So they want an original of mine, I'd want an original of them, and then I would, just be able to look at that.
So would you say that that's kind of a hint for high school kids who are into art, college students who are kind of beginning their art, career, so to speak? Get these books, follow some of the main artists of history.
Oh yeah,
And kind of find one.
right. Yeah,
That's kind of fits you.
right.
Anybody.
Well, what's interesting
You
to
gotta
me
find
is
your own.
there's a
Obviously.
variety of interests, right? So every
Yeah.
artist's art, they feel differently about different kinds of art,
Oh, yeah.
Some people look at mine and say, I have absolutely no interest in this guy's art,
Yeah.
Other people will look at another artist that I have no interest in, and they find it fascinating and
I always found
beautiful and-
Wyatt,
Oh, I love
to be very fascinating to me. He was very soft, very simple.
Yeah.
It was very emotional. It was visceral.
Yeah.
To me, I always found Wyatt to be, and I'm not an artist at all, and I never even tried to be. But I always found his art to kind of connect
Andrew
with me.
Wyatt, yeah.
Andrew Wyatt, yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites for sure.
he?
Another one that's been very instrumental to me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, kind of has a lot of watercolor too.
I have this theory about art, and that is this. If you're going to buy art, you see it on the shelf somewhere, you see it in the museum somewhere, you're going to buy it from somebody, it's got to be a piece of art that connects with you in a personal way.
Sure.
Your own personal experience, your own personal memories. There's got to be something with that piece of art and you that connect. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't connect, you're not going to buy it.
Right.
You're not even going to look at it probably.
Right,
You're going to pass it by because it doesn't kind of grab you emotionally or doesn't bring back a memory or an experience that you've had.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, and it's like music. I see music as being that way as well. You listen to a certain song, and especially if it's a song that you've heard in the past, and it's connected to a strong memory that you had.
Yeah,
And you hear it
yeah.
again 40 years later, it instantly takes you back. It's like a smell. It's like It's like a grandma's cookies that she baked. When you were a kid.
It's true.
It
It's
connects
true.
with that.
Because if you put something on your wall that you connect with,
Right.
every time you look at that,
you're taken back.
you kind of smell grandma's cookies.
That's right.
So I mean, it's that
Yeah.
idea. You
Yeah.
you resurrect that memory again and that
Right.
feeling
Yeah.
associated with that memory.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
which Wyeth would you? I mean, what?
Well, I loved his scene there in that cabin on the ocean, right on the ocean side. It's that beautiful white building. It's like a cabin. It's like a little house, a little residence.
So what's the connection for you then?
But the connection is I like the ocean.
Right.
I like the beach.
Uh-huh.
I like the fields and where the field and the ocean come together.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where I found it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think even though the building
Yeah.
itself, I've had many times where I've been on an ocean side and been in cabins and buildings of that kind, and it brings back those memories.
Right. Yeah.
Not profound, but
Yeah.
little.
And somehow that artist has captured that place in your mind.
And when I see it, I
Yeah.
think. I
Right.
think of several incidences in my history that I can now think about and remember and just kind of reflect on.
And that's one of the purposes of, I think, one of the purposes of art, really. It does that. Had a good friend who lost a child, and as part of therapy, she went into the museums in Europe.
Oh.
And through looking at the art
Yeah.
and kind of just spending time meditating with the images,
Beautiful.
she experienced some type of healing,
Yes.
emotional healing from just being with those images. I
Because
think
you
that's-
reflect.
Yeah.
You reflect on your own life. You reflect on experiences you've had, bad or good.
Yeah.
And you can process those. You can get through them.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
Good art does that.
Yeah, art does that.
So my daughter is studying to be an art therapist right
Mm-hmm.
now, and it's interesting because I consider both of my kids actually as more artists than I am. Really,
Oh, really?
both of them. Yeah. My son is the drummer. He's the musician, and my daughter's she does the visual art. But
They're all in the artistic.
But yeah, they grew up in a home where art was appreciated. And I think
maybe that's a good point right there. And that if as parents, you're not an artist, okay? I'm not an artist, but
Sure.
I appreciate art. So in our home, we have art. You know, so people who come and go out of the house,
Right.
you know, get a sense of art, you know, just by being in their home.
Right, yeah.
And it gives me a sense of appreciation. But it doesn't motivate me to draw.
No?
But
No.
it does motivate me to reflect.
Right.
And to remember and to have good memories.
Right.
So maybe every home should really have a kind of a sense of art,
Sure.
you know, just to kind of introduce some feeling and some reflection into your home.
Well, in every classroom, in my opinion, should have that aesthetic as well. So it should have music. It should have art. It should have performing arts. It should. School should have that. And when a school doesn't have that, it's a cold space. It's a factory. You know, it needs to. The human part of us needs to have arts, and we need to have music. We need to be having that surrounding us in our life. That's my opinion, but I think that's a part of life that is.
I'm wondering if most parents would take the position that I'm not an artist, so therefore we don't put art up.
Well, I didn't grow up in a home of artists. Yeah, my parents were not artists.
But you got, as a parent, you got to think maybe my kids are.
Yeah.
Or maybe my kids will be or can be.
And how do I nurture that?
And how do I nurture that rather than I'm not an artist, so therefore who cares?
Yeah. No, you need, I mean, and you don't know when you're raising kids, you don't know what direction they're going to end up going.
Yeah.
So you present them with lots of different possibilities, and if they want to try in sports is so good.
Yeah.
You know, getting them outside, doing fishing, outdoor activities, whatever, but also give them exposure to arts.
I've always said that's the kind of the role of the parent.
Yeah.
Expose your kids to the most wide variety of activities.
Right.
Athletic activities, artistic activities,
Yep.
you know, intellectual activities, reading activities, all these kinds of things. Because you don't know what your kid's going to connect with.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
But you have to introduce the options.
For sure. My parents also took me to museums, so they had me viewing art.
Yes.
And then talking about it. And even though they themselves were not artists, they saw this in me, capitalized on that.
I remember we went to Philadelphia one time with our kids, and I think we visited like 8 art museums.
Oh, wow.
You know, on a kind of a long weekend.
Yeah.
But we went from art museum to art museum to art museum.
Sure.
I mean, you know, it was boring maybe after a while, but at least it opened the door.
I wouldn't be bored, by the way.
No. And we weren't either, but I mean, but you do after a while. You get to see so much of it, and you can.
Yeah, and certain, you know, like for me, if I go to an art museum, I can be there for a few hours, and then I'm so inspired, I have to go and create art. I have to go and do something about it. I can't just ingest it. You know?
Would you agree that with this is one of the things that a parent should do? Should introduce a kid to art by taking them to art museums or art galleries or art studios.
Yes, I think they should enroll them in summer art programs.
Yeah,
as many as possible.
Hey, we're going to take a break in a minute, but look at some of your art there. It's there on the screen. Tell us about that. You're a sketcher, basically.
Right.
As a artist, you would identify yourself as a sketcher.
Right.
So what are you doing there?
Yeah, so these are different scenes. The one that you see there of the barn, there's one of the barn with a colorful sky that was a reflection of an experience we had back in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So that represents that, and you know, just kind of the colors. It's not anything that I actually saw. I mean, it's based on something that I saw, but it's changed. I took some my own liberties with that, but it represents the experience that I had driving around in the evenings and looking at some of the Amish barns that were there.
So there's a beautiful sketch.
Now there's another sketch that was inspired by our trip to Princeton, New Jersey, just recently. Just one of the homes in the neighborhood, but. You know, what caught my eye here was just even the shadows of the tree against the white. See that? See the shadow there? I love shadows. I love what light does.
That prompts me to guess who might have lived in that home.
Yeah.
You know, that looks like it was back to the 1700s or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe long before that.
Yeah.
So you get the idea of who lived in that or who created that.
Right. Yeah. And then this one is a little, you know, colorful. But I've been playing around. With art, you're always wanting to push the envelope a little bit. You want to do things that are different. You don't want to stay on the same thing. You know, you kind of get to where you're trying to perfect something, but you always want to push the envelope and try something new. So I'm doing different things with the sky, actually prompted by my son, who told me, "Dad, you're doing blue skies. Look at the sky. It's not always blue. Try some different colors." So he's the one that kind of encouraged me. So
which is true, by the way.
Yeah.
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 So
there's a couple other ones. So you paint buildings.
I do a lot of architecture.
Sketch. I should use the word sketch. You sketch buildings.
Yeah, I do a lot of things, but I do, for some reason, I do like architecture.
Uh-huh.
And you can see even in this one, it's tweaked a little bit. It's not quite, the perspective isn't exactly right. That's okay.
But see, that's where your math comes in and integrates with art.
So you can, and here's where I kind of get a little, with artists can be exact, they can be correct. They can draw something correct.
Mm-hmm.
But then, to me, what really gets interesting is when they can be correct, but then they go off of that and they make something intentionally incorrect.
So, I see. So it creates a dissonance
well,
or a question in your mind, or
that's where
draws you into it.
The artistic expression comes out. So,
yeah.
I mean, you get to the place where anybody can be correct. So if you go and you study art, you can draw something so it looks like a photograph, or paint something that looks exactly like the real thing. To me, that's okay, but you get better when you can start bringing out some expressionism through that.
That's interesting.
So that's a little bit of an artistic opinion.
So if anybody likes your art, your website is on the screen there.
Sure, yeah.
And all they have to do is access your website.
Yep.
And they can see all your art, but they can also buy some of your art.
If they wanted to, yeah.
If they want to. Of course they want to. Why wouldn't one want to buy some of your art?
That's a good question.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Hey, we're going to take a break.
All right.
And come back. When we come back, I want to ask you the question in terms of like art being like a second career. You know, you have your own career. You're working for Fresno Pacific University in the area of online education. So you do art as a kind of a second career. And I'm wondering if that's almost what art is. It's kind of a second option. It's a second career. Very, very few people make it their primary career or live off of it, have enough money to live off of it.
Sure.
So I always see art as kind of a second career, a second option, a second interest.
Okay.
So come back and we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Sounds good.
Okay, go get a cup of coffee and we'll see you in a moment.
The Green Gables Care Home is a 24-hour assisted living facility for the elderly located in Clovis, California, offering spacious private and semi-private rooms which are wheelchair approved, catering to the special person in your life who needs attention and wants to live in a loving home environment. The Green Gables Care Home has assisted living in secured homes for elderly with Alzheimer's, memory loss, and for your loved ones needing assistance with their activities of daily living. Call 559-297-9438 and visit greengablescarehome.com.
Sometimes good intentions hurt rather than help. For just $1.76 per meal, the Fresno Rescue Mission offers more than food. We offer hope. Please donate today.
Do you need a locksmith? Layman's Lock and Safe Service and Repair is available for you. 559-228-1805.
Gained a lot, learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010 and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Choosing a Medicare plan can be difficult and frustrating. Susan Hatch can guide you through the Medicare maze and help find the right plan for you. Susan helps people understand the confusing and drastic changes that occur every year in Medicare. Susan will only recommend plans that will protect your assets and allow you to continue to see your personal doctor. As a 100% independent agent, Susan is not controlled by any particular insurance company to steer a person onto any one particular plan. Susan was awarded the #1 Medicare supplement agent in California. Look for Susan's Medicare question and answers every Monday in the Fresno Bee. Call Susan at 559-307-2287 and visit MedicareToday.net.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay.
All right, welcome back, and glad you're joining us again as we pick up the second part of art in the family and how you as a parent can encourage and stimulate art in your children, and with the idea that perhaps you have a child that could become an artist. You don't know. We don't know that in their early stages. But as a parent, your job is to encourage your children in art and to give opportunities for art, and then see if that art sparks and will put a fire in the life of your kid and become an artist. Who knows? But that's your job as a parent, at least to explore that possibility. So along that line, we're talking with Rob Carey, who is a international sketcher, international artist, well acclaimed internationally. We have most of his art comes out of Germany. And what we want to do is kind of pick his brain a little bit further with the question of, you have made art kind of like a second career. You work for Fresno Pacific University. You spend your time on the computer helping online education. But you do art as kind of a afterthought, or I'll call it a second career. How do you include that in your life?
Well, so it's interesting. It's an interesting question because it's a second career, I guess you could say that, because I do sell art on the side here and there. Yes. Not a lot. I mean, some, you know. But now that I'm having the opportunity to teach art, it really has become more of a second career. It really, it's really
it grows into that.
It has been growing, yeah. But to get to that place, and this is something that I would encourage too. I think if we're talking to parents, probably the best thing I ever did was I got rid of our television set.
Actually, that may be a key factor.
Not to say that TV's bad. We're on TV here, but I got rid of the TV set. But the idea is to get rid of distractions that you know are going to distract you or distract your kids. And however you do that, you don't have to get rid of it, but you put limitations on it. You put boundaries on it. It's the computer, it's the phone, whatever is distracting. Because we like to see others perform. But it's if you spend the time instead of filling your mind with watching somebody else do it. If you spend your time creating yourself, then you can develop something that can go into a second career.
Sure. There's a principle in life that says something to this effect. If you're going to develop something, you got to stop something.
Right, yeah.
You know, you got to put something aside.
Right.
So if you're going to develop your art skills, you have to not do something else.
Yeah.
Put some time in it, whether it's 10 minutes or it's an hour, whatever. Yeah. But you got to kind of, it's juggling time.
Right.
You got to make time for it. And parents oversee that.
Yeah, so our son was a drummer, and so we allowed him a certain amount of time to drum every day. He couldn't drum 8 hours a day. No. Obviously, the neighbors wouldn't be happy with us, but we said you can have a certain amount of time every day. So he did the max every single day. For me, art with drawing, I drew at least 2 hours a day for about 3 years straight. That's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of time.
And anything that you put that much time into, you're going to develop it.
You're going to develop,
and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, the 10,000 hour rule. If you put 10,000 hours into something, a skill, you're going to be one of the best at that particular skill that you're practicing.
And you start when you're grade 2 or 3 or 4.
But you don't have to.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
You didn't.
You can start later, yeah.
Like you said, you had 20 years where you didn't do any art.
Right, yeah.
You got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think art really contributes to the life of a family? You're a family. What does art contribute? Any family. Why would you have art as part of your family, whether it's pictures or drawing or whatever?
Well, you mentioned something. You mentioned something about when you look at an image or a painting, it takes you to a certain memory, a certain place.
That's right.
So I think, photographers to me are fascinating artists because they do that with their photograph. They can take a photograph of a family or a place, and we put, photographs all over. We surround ourselves with them because they remind us of the love that we have for our kids, our parents, grandparents, and I think that's important. With paintings, like you said, it might be a certain geographical location, or it reminds them of a place where they grew up, memories with people that they fished with, on the whatever, and I think that's it. It reminds us of the pleasures and the joys of life, and I think that's one of the values of it.
So if I'm a parent and have young children or teenagers, I often find art starting in the teenage years. They do various kinds of drawings. What should I do?
I would say encourage it. I try to interact with that, ask questions about it. Tell me what I've got a nephew, and I like asking questions of what are you drawing, and where do you get the inspiration for that?
Yeah, but if it's art that doesn't appeal to me, in fact, they might even find it to be somewhat offensive. Something I don't want to talk about. I don't want to encourage.
You may not want to encourage it, but I think having that discussion is important because then you're kind of digging in. Anybody that draws, if they fill sketchbooks with art, they're doing it for a reason. There's a purpose.
Yeah.
It may just be that they like the way it looks and they want to try to imitate it. That could be all it is, really. Mm-hmm. Or it could maybe connect to something that they're going through.
Maybe a parent needs to think about art being progressive. What a kid draws today may not be of any interest or any value, or maybe you're even offended by it.
Right.
But maybe the next thing he'll draw, or the next thing after that, what he'll draw down the line.
Right.
That's a different story.
And they're developing skills even through that. So when I was a kid, when I was in high school, I drew a lot of warriors. So I drew kind of knights on horses with swords and all this stuff. I don't draw that anymore.
King Arthur.
I do architecture now. It's completely different. Not that I couldn't do that, but that's
not
the
phase of your life.
It was just a developing phase. So I was developing the ability to do the drawing, which later led into what really my more developed interests were.
But it might even reflected your interest at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe you're reading and other things, or you were interested in kind of Knights of the Round Table or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you lost interest in that. You kind of moved on to something else.
Yeah. That's true.
You became more of a scientist.
But I think when you have the dialogue with your kids about whether it's music or whether it's art or performance, whatever it is, when you're having that dialogue, you're just getting to know your kids more, and I think that is there's a value in just that. I mentioned my son is a drummer. Well, if I talk about I don't understand his music. I don't understand drumming. I really don't understand it. But to hear him articulate why he's doing certain things or why he likes this particular music more than others, I'm getting to know him. And I think that part is important. That interaction is important.
Is there one particular skill, though, that you may not develop, but you just kind of have innately? That God has put within you in your creation, a kind of an appreciation of some kind, or a skill of some kind, or an ability of some kind. You got to have that.
Maybe.
As kind of a beginning point. And if you don't have that, maybe art is not your thing. I mean, do you think that every artist, if you will, has that innate art skill of some kind from which it grows, from which it takes off?
Maybe. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think some people think that.
Yeah.
But I
hear that, yeah.
But I also think, though, that on the other side of that is that I think a lot of people have it, but they don't know they have it. I've talked to a lot of people who said, and this is the common quote, I can't even draw a stick figure.
Yeah, well I can.
Say, you know what, I bet you could. Because honestly, the way I feel about myself, I don't really think that I'm that fantastic of an artist. I really don't think I am. I don't think I can draw that well.
But you can. We saw it.
Well, but that's a lot of problem solving to get to that point.
Yeah.
My daughter, on the other hand, is much quicker. She can draw. She goes directly to pen. She can draw with pen. I have to start with a pencil, and then I have to draw several lines before I'm happy with the line I got. She can go directly to pen. So I would say she's got more of a natural hand-eye ability with the art than I do.
That's my answer. Is there an innate skill? Is there innate ability? Maybe that's hand-eye coordination. Maybe that's...
Well, here's the thing.
Maybe that's the skill.
How many kids have learned in the old days to draw the letter R? How many kids learn to draw the letter R?
Yeah.
And they do a very good job at putting that loop on there and having that little leg come down.
Yeah.
If you can do the letter R, you can learn to draw a face.
Is that right?
If you can do the letter, if you can do the letter M, and you got both mountains are pretty even there across the top, you can learn to draw a mountain. I mean, these are skills that we just need to teach. They're skills that we need to build
we wouldn't think of
confidence
that
into
way.
kids. Yeah.
We just think of an M as an M and R as an R. And
now, whether I've got inside of me this special ability as an artist, I don't really know. I'm not sure about that. But I think that because I put the time and practice into it...
You think it's important to know that? I mean, maybe it's not important to know that.
I don't think
maybe
it's so important.
If you think you do, go for it.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, go for it.
Yeah.
Let your work, let your production kind of speak for itself.
Yeah, I had a good friend who told me early on when I started getting back into art, and he said, don't take yourself so seriously. He said, yeah, you have good art, but it's not that great. It's and he's a professional musician, and he told me, he said, just don't take yourself too seriously. Be critical. Analyze everything that you're doing and look at it carefully and say, what can I do better? And let that kind of push you forward. And it has. I really tried to live by that. And
Maybe it's important to just disregard that whole idea that I have an innate ability to have art,
Right.
to be an artist.
Yeah.
Maybe just forget that whole idea. Just say, if you have an interest in art, draw.
Yeah.
If you like it, draw.
Right.
You know, if you like it, sketch. You
Sure.
know, if have some interest, something strikes your mind, something motivates you, just do it.
Yeah.
Forget this idea that I have this innate ability. I was born to be an artist, or
Right.
you know, I have that skill that somehow God implanted within me. Maybe just forget that whole idea in a sense.
Yeah.
No, and then just let the art come out.
Yeah.
And maybe later in life you might be able to say, yeah, I think it was kind of a inspired kind of ability or whatever. But forget it for now.
Yeah.
Just do it. If you like it, do it.
People have said to me, "Well, you've got a talent." I'd rather say, "No, I put in a lot of hard work. I spend a lot of time doing it."
Yeah, you become talented. Actually. Yeah.
We all have talents. I think it's when you develop certain talents that you actually
Yeah.
can have a voice in it.
But if you have to believe that you're an artist by innate ability,
No, again-
you'll never become one.
No. I say go beyond that. Just
Yeah.
practice. If it's something you want to do, practice it, practice it, practice it, perfect it, get better, put in the time, spend the hard work.
You know, I was in college. I had to take a class in art appreciation. It was a dud. I just had to memorize like Van Gogh and a lot of the artists
Oh, okay.
and identify their art and match their name with the art and kind of look at the styles of art
Yeah.
over time, over history, how it unfolded. I had no particular interest in that.
Huh, yeah.
It never sparked a sense of art for me.
Sure.
But now looking back on it, you know, years later, 100 years later,
Yeah.
you know, I kind of appreciate art and the styles of art
Yeah.
and how it's unfolded over time. I mean, it did have value, but at that time, I had no interest in it whatsoever.
Well, you start making connections later. I think as you get older and you travel,
Yeah.
and you travel and you go, oh wow, this is the cafe where so and so did this painting, and now I get to be here. It's context. A lot of it's context, you know. And as you study other things, then those connections with art then become more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should a person belong to an art club? Like you know, you're learning your art, you're developing still, and always will be. Should you belong to an art club? Should you belong to an art studio where your art is displayed and where other artists come together and you encourage each other? Is there something about that? Or are artists more individual? Or are artists more private people? They just do their thing privately, individual, and they aren't socializers.
Yeah, that's an interesting
What do
question.
you think about that?
Early on, there's a art movement called urban sketchers,
And you're a member of that.
I jumped on that in the very, very early stages, and I love that idea. It's a community of artists.
But you don't meet in a building.
They meet out in the streets, and they sketch on the streets, and I appreciate that. But it's not so much who I am personally. I'm more of an individual artist. I think that's more of who I am. I like to go and practice on my own. I have a lot of distraction. Not that I'm not social. I like social. I just don't like to mix the two
So
necessarily.
in the field of art,
Yeah.
you're more isolative. You're more alone.
I am personally, but I think for the majority of people, I think being a social artist, I think is, and I think people that want to develop their art, I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it.
Is it?
I think it is, yeah, because you can encourage each other, and they give, you give recommendations or you give compliments, and I think that really spurs people on to do better. And for me personally, though, I'm kind of more of, I like to go back and I like to work on my craft on my own.
So it'd be a good thing. For
I think it's a
kid
very good thing.
Growing up, learning art, get together with a couple other people.
Yeah, I
Go
think
out in the street and sketch together.
Right.
Draw together.
Yeah. And
Just make it a social event.
I've done that, and I appreciate the time doing that. But I would almost rather, let's put the sketchbooks away and let's just have a cup of coffee and talk.
Yeah.
And then later on, we'll just go and we'll kind of split up and go do our art.
Sketch.
That's more me, but that's not everybody.
Let me ask you a question. I know that you've given some thought to art in the schools. We are in a day and age now that the schools have pretty much removed art from the
A
curriculum.
lot of schools have.
And 80% maybe. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But a number of schools have just removed music and have removed art, from the school curriculum. Either because they don't appreciate it or they just think there are other things they have to do more important. Mm-hmm. What's your view on that?
Well, they're making a big mistake.
I gather.
Yeah. And I think more and more, I think especially right now in education, I think that's changing. I think it really is.
Oh, it's coming back?
I think it really is, big time. Because I think the people that are, we live in a very interesting age, with technology and things, and we're creating technology to solve a lot of problems.
Sure.
But what people are finding even in technology industry is that they want to hire artists. They want to hire them because an artist has practiced using the side of their brain that solves problems in a way that it's divergent thinking. It's completely different than just knowing all the, I know all the answers to this particular this math problem. I know exactly what to fill in the spreadsheet and everything. No, they need people that are able to look at things from a completely different perspective. And that's kind of the artist. That's what you're exercising when you're
an outside the box kind of an idea.
Yeah. So what arts does is it's creative, right? So you start by imitating other artists, you imitate other dancers or imitate other musicians, but eventually you get to the place of proficiency where you move beyond the imitation to then you start creating, and you get to a place where now and this is, in my opinion, this is the highest level of learning, and that's when you're developing and you're creating, and no one else has ever done it, but you're building on what you've learned.
It seems to me we live in an age of visual stimulation.
Very visual.
We have visual stimulation to the max.
Right.
So learning art in a school program opens up career possibilities.
For sure.
I mean, enormous. So by not providing that, we're limiting the opportunity for some kid developing a career interest or option.
Right. And they say that most of the careers that are going to be upon us in 10 years here haven't even, they're not even careers now. So how do you prepare somebody for that?
Yeah.
You've got to, you don't really know exactly what to teach them. Yeah, you're kind of like, what am I going to do? But you do need to provide them with opportunities where they can use that part of the brain, that creative part of the brain, solving problems.
Let me ask you another question. Very similar. Art in the church. Churches are not known for their art interest and art displays.
Now.
And historically, maybe a little bit. I mean, churches had all kinds of artistic designs and paintings and statues and so on. I mean, the history of the church is enormously powerful in the area of art.
Yeah.
But we've kind of gotten away from that. And I think when Martin Luther came along in the 1500s, a lot of that went. They made churches very simple.
Right. Yeah.
And is it coming back? Should it come back? How should it come back?
Well, yeah, that's a good question too. And I'm not a historian, but if you look at all the cathedrals in Europe that we used to visit, art was a major part of Christianity, and a lot of religions, but a big part of Christianity, and that did go away. But again, when you walked into a cathedral in those days, a lot of people were illiterate, so they weren't reading their Bible, or they didn't have access to a scripture.
That's right.
So what they saw around them was their Bible.
They saw it in visual form.
Stained glass. Visually, they experienced the Bible visually. So then now art is still used in the church, but it's kind of focused, at least in my opinion, it's focused a lot on the music side. It's focused a lot on music. But it doesn't have to be just music.
No, it doesn't.
I think it needs to be visual art and performing art. It's a little bit... It's kind of difficult because we have a traditional idea of how we picture the church being.
Sure.
And when you have somebody go up on stage and she's twirling around and dancing and she has scarves and things, we kind of go, wow, this is not quite what I'm used to.
Shouldn't be.
But I think we need to really consider how should art be used. Those are gifts. Those are gifts people have developed.
Sure.
How can we use those in the church? Because there are appropriate ways, in my opinion.
And how can art help me worship?
Right.
How can art help me connect with God?
Yeah. Good question.
There's a lot of ways to connecting with God. Art, it can be one of those.
Absolutely.
I mean, not have to be music.
Yeah.
As you say, maybe music overdone. Maybe that's overplayed a little bit. Maybe we need to kind of reintroduce the idea of art.
I think so.
Are artists kind of coming forward and making that message and making that known?
Usually artists don't. I don't see the artists are always putting themselves forward.
Advocating for themselves.
They really need to have somebody advocate for them. I guess that's my experience. So
I think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, art is really around us. We even have cities, that have these wall murals on different buildings, and you walk through the city looking at the history of that city artistically.
Yeah.
And in Canada, there's a nice little town in the Vancouver Island that you can spend about 2 hours just walking through, looking at the history of that community. Wall murals.
Fantastic.
We need more of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
or it becomes part of the city, as compared to graffiti.
Graffiti's interesting, yeah, and graffiti is an art form.
It is,
and it's very difficult, but it is. I see it also as very important. It's defacing a lot of times, so it can be very, very negative. But in order to do graffiti well, you have to be an artist. You really have to understand a lot of things about painting. And so I appreciate it from one side. I don't appreciate when it's defacing.
Well,
public
graffiti's
property.
gotten a bad rap because it does deface, and it's done in places where you should not. It's illegal.
Right.
And it's often with an offensive message.
Yeah.
So it's gotten a bad rap.
Well, we need to embrace that. So here's a little experience, a little story. When I went to Indonesia a couple of years ago, and I was with a guy who was an Indonesian, and I wanted to find something to sketch, something to draw for later. And so he drove me to a certain part of town, and I told him, "Stop the car. I got to get out. I got to start taking some photo images here, and maybe sketch." Mm-hmm. We jumped out, and this whole area. This was in Jakarta, beautifully painted. And as soon as they found out, we started talking to folks in there. As soon as they found out that I was an artist, they gathered all their artists in that little village, and they brought them over to me, and I got to meet the graffiti artist. He was once a very well-known graffiti artist in that part of the town. And he then explained to me what the city did was they embraced that.
Yes.
They provided him with paint, and he helped decorate this very, very bad part of town and made it beautiful. And so what it did was it not only did it build up the community, but it also built him up.
Oh.
Gave him some confidence.
Value, yeah.
That he had something to contribute to the community.
Isn't that beautiful?
It was life-changing for him. So it was really fun to meet.
You said that.
Fun to meet him, yeah.
Say, you are with Fresno Pacific University.
Yeah.
You direct the online education program.
Well, so the independent study.
Independent study. So
yeah.
If there's a teacher out there that needs some advanced education, how do they do it?
Yeah.
What do you provide?
So Fresno Pacific Continuing Education provides, we have about 350 online and correspondence courses for teachers for professional development. So you can take courses that will not only improve your teaching, but also help you on the salary scale, move up on the salary scale. So I do teach myself. I teach about 11 courses right now, one of them being watercolor sketching, actually. One of our popular courses, and I love teaching this idea that you can take this into the school, take the idea of sketching into the classroom, and start developing the creative side of your students. So, but yeah, we have great instructors. We have a lot of great courses.
How do they connect with you? Is there a website? Is there some kind of a...
ce.fresno.edu is the website. So
Say that again.
Go to ce.fresno.edu and just browse through our courses. Find something that you, as a teacher, that you would like to develop in yourself and improve your teaching, and you can register right there online.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for today. This has been an interesting walk down the artist lane, I guess, is what we're talking about, and we appreciate the perspective. Art in the schools, art in the home, art in the community, art in the church.
Yeah, we went cover a lot of places.
All the places where art fits, because art is among us, and
it's
part of us, and it should be part of us.
Should be part of life. Yeah, that's
and
right.
We just need to develop our appreciation and our skill.
Yeah.
And our courage.
Yeah, and don't just say I can only draw a stick figure. You can draw a lot more than that. Just take my class.
That's the way we do it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, and check the quote on the screen there. Art is an international language that draws people together.
Right.
And you are an international artist. You've drawn a lot of people together. That quote means something to you, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yep, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, made friends all over the world through art. All over the world. Yeah.
It broadened your world.
It really does.
Broadened your experience.
And I've got to meet a few of them, too.
Okay, pick up my book, Dr. Teach Me to Parent. A great book for you as a parent. And go to my website. It's on the screen there. And you can order it there or Amazon. Pick it up there as well. Dr. Teach Me to Parent. See you next week. Bye for now.